It's only June, but that means we're only 2 months away from our drafts, and it's never too early to see who we like, who we dislike, especially in the early rounds of our drafts. Today we're going to be going through the first 8 rounds and picking some of our favorites based off of the current consensus ADP. That is very important. But we're on the road to 300 subs on the channel, so if you enjoy the channel at any point, please support us down below. Whether if you just like the video or subscribe to the channel, it all goes a very long way, and we're closing in on that milestone, and we can't do it without you guys. So we appreciate any and all support here on the channel. Well, we're going to start here in the first round like expected, right? And it seems like it's almost impossible to miss on the first round picks every single year, but it's worth note that on average, only about half of the picks live up to their expectations. Whether if that's due to injuries or situation or whatever, only half of the first round picks finish at the value that you draft them. And this year, to no one's surprise, as of right now, I'm pretty okay with everybody here on the left side of your screen. But with that being said, one of my favorites to draft here in the first round is Stefon Diggs. I will say that he's not my overall number one, my 101. Of course, I love the other guys on this list just as much as Stefon Diggs, but I believe Stefon Diggs is the most underrated. We'll start by saying that he still has Josh Allen as his quarterback. That's always going to be a plus until Diggs moves on. But he's had 3 consecutive seasons with 100 receptions, 1,200 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 6 last year, finishing top 10 in target share and 4th in target share in the red zone. Yeah, I will say that Diggs is entering his age 30 season. Do we have to worry about his age? Is there going to be a decline? But the good news is that the Bills are officially out of the D-Hop sweepstakes according to most reports. So it's hard to believe that we don't get another elite year from Stefon Diggs at the wide receiver position. Now, I will say it is also worth to note, not dealing with the first round pick here. The players on the left side of your screen are based off the current consensus ADP off of Fantasy Pros. So don't get mad at me if a guy's fallen too far. These are not my rankings, right? But the players with the green boxes around them are my top 3 to 5 favorite players each round, which that doesn't mean I don't like the other players that I don't highlight. It's also worth note that the ones with the red boxes, which you'll see here in a round or two, that's just the one we're going to be focusing in on each and every round. I think it's pretty self-explanatory as we move over here to the second round, where you see guys like Saquon Barkley, Jalen Waddle, and Tony Pollard highlighted. I love those guys this round. For the elite quarterbacks, the Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, and Josh Allens, I love those guys, right? But I think the earliest I would draft one of those top 3, those big 3 quarterbacks, is round 3. Devontae Smith and Amon-Ra, they're also really good options, as well as Jonathan Taylor. Hopefully he's not involved in that betting scandal going on over there in Indianapolis. But with that being said, we're going to move over to Saquon Barkley, my favorite pick as of right now in the second round. He was the RB5 last year, and under Brian Daboll, first-year head coach, he finished second in overall touches. He scored 10 touchdowns inside the 10-yard line, which was a major improvement under Brian Daboll from the prior coaching staff. But it's a contract year for Saquon, so you can only expect he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to want to have a monster year on the ground and through the air. And with how high wide receivers are going this year, I can see a running back of this caliber falling to the second round. And if you're at the turn, this is a dream second rounder, a dream of a second round pick for you. A great way to start your drafts. Imagine if you start your drafts with a Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, right? Or a Stefon Diggs, Saquon Barkley. You're going to be in a pretty good spot here in 2023. In round 3, you see guys like Breece Hall. That's not in my highlighted boxes. I love Breece Hall this year. I just like the other guys a tad bit more. That's really all it comes down to. There's some other guys like Calvin Ridley, who I've been high on all offseason. It seems like the crowd is catching up now. He's not worth a third-round pick to me this year. He's more so of the 4 through 6, maybe even 5 through 6 range as far as drafting rounds. You see the guys like Lamar and other guys, which I love those guys. It's just I'm not as comfortable drafting them as I was like a guy like Josh Jacobs, a guy who was the RB2 last year with the very cheap draft price that he had last season. He was the full-blown workhorse last year, if I could talk. I'm expecting the same in a contract year. He's playing for a big contract, whether if that's with the Raiders or another ball club. This is a guy who led the NFL in touches and rushing yards last year. Not to mention they brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, at least that we think, as long as he can pass a physical. But the Raiders quarterback is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. He loves to check down, as we know with his time in San Fran and even New England. He's going to check down more so than Derek Carr. It's only going to bring more passing upside here for Josh Jacobs in 2023. I don't think there's a way or a world that he falls to the third round. But in that case, if you're in the 1 through 4 spots, snag him in the third round, right? You start with Justin Jefferson, come back around with a Devontae Smith. You get your RB1 here in Josh Jacobs in the third round. Almost a dream scenario. Sounds too good to be true. And if it does sound too good to be true, it most likely is, right? Moving on to the fourth round, Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris, and Joe Burrow. I love in this round. Other guys like DeAndre Hopkins, it depends on where he lands. You see some other guys like receivers like DJ Moore, Christian Kirk. Their situations are a little bit iffy. Jerry Jeudy, Mike Williams, same thing. Hawkinson's not a terrible pick here, but I would just wait an extra round on that. But really just the six or seven guys in this picture on your left side of your screen, I love in this round, right? But if I had to narrow it down to 3, those are the 3 that are highlighted. And if it really comes down to it, I'm drafting Joe Burrow in the 4th round. So if it's not Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, or Pat Mahomes, the big 3 this year, right? If it's not drafting those guys in the 3rd round, between round 4 through 6, my quarterbacks 4 through 7, the Burrow, Justin Herberts, the Justin Fields of the world, those guys, I love the draft in the rounds 4 through 6. It's really the best value that you can find, right, if that makes sense. But Joe Burrow, he finished as a quarterback 4 last year with a career high in passing touchdowns, not to mention 5 of them on the ground. Their O-line has improved dramatically this offseason, and not to mention, he still has Jamar Chase. He still has T. Higgins at his disposal. I might end up releasing my draft guidelines this offseason. I might not, especially if my league mates start to tune in. But like I said, if it's not the big 3, yeah, I'm taking the best quarterback available in the rounds 4 through 6. And in this case, it's Joe Burrow. And I just overall love getting my number 4 overall quarterback in the 4th round. And if you had the number 2 pick, for example, you could pair a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins with a Joe Burrow if you really wanted to go that Bengals heavy. But Joe Burrow, amazing quarterback, number 2 player in the world in real life, in my opinion. Amazing value there in the 4th round. Moving over to round 5, you see guys like Ken Walker. He's now fallen all this way because of JSN and Zach Charbonnet. You see Drake London, Terry McLaurin. I love Justin Herbert in this round. Like I said, he's in that range with Joe Burrow. Aaron Jones, George Kittle, and J.K. Dobbins are other guys that I do love in this round. And I'm going to start this by saying, George Kittle on the right side of your screen, I want to go deeper into George Kittle, give you guys a little bit more insight, but he is not my favorite pick this round. It is definitely Aaron Jones if I had to narrow it down. But we've already touched on 2 or 3 running backs, right? So I want to show the tight end some love, right? And that's all this comes down to. But George Kittle, he's coming off of a very strange season. A guy who had 11 touchdowns last year, a career high for him. But at the same time, he only had 50 or so receiving yards, which was the fewest since his rookie year. George Kittle, he's been an efficient pass catcher in his entire career. He averages about 10 yards a target, right? So in fantasy terms, if you play full PPR, that's 2 yards a catch, or that's 2 points a catch, right? That's something you want on your team. But we know he is a team-first player. That's going to beg the question, will he be targeted often enough to suit us as fantasy managers? They're in a weird position. The 49ers we're talking, they're in a weird position with their quarterbacks. Whether if it's going to be Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. A report came out yesterday that said by the looks of it, Brock Purdy will be the day 1 starter, but he is coming off of that elbow injury, right? Is he going to be at 100% like he was last year? Is he going to be able to improve at the quarterback position? There's a lot of questions surrounding the most important position to get Kittle fantasy production. Not to mention, he's also going to have to share targets with wide receivers Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and of course, Christian McCaffrey at the running back position. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to draft this guy with all the questions surrounding him, but I believe whoever the quarterback is, their first look, their first read is always going to be George Kittle, and as long as he can hover around that 8 to touchdown range like he did last year, this is going to be a steal of a pick in the 5th round, especially with how bad tight ends have been the last couple years. In the 6th round, you see guys like JSN, one of the highest drafted receivers here in 2023. You have a bunch of number 2s, whether if it's Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett, or Kadarius Toney in this case. Some interesting options there. George Pickens could take a step up at the end of the 6th round here. But my top 3 is probably going to be JSN, Jordan Addison, and Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, really, if he is going to be back next year, like 100%, the team is committed to him. He's no doubt the pick here, right? As he's shown in the past that if he is on that roster and the team is committed to him, he's going to be a fantasy relevant back, a top 12 back, usually year in and year out. But due to the questions surrounding Dalvin Cook and due to the crowded receiver room there in Seattle, I'm going to go with Jordan Addison. I know, hear me out. It sounds crazy, but let me just get into it a little bit. Maybe I could change your mind. Adam Thielen, the well-known wide receiver 2 in this Minnesota offense for years and years, he's no longer there. That's going to open up 107 targets in this offense. Dalvin Cook might also be out the door like I just mentioned. That's only going to add more targets here that is open for someone to take, right, in this offense. Someone has to take a good chunk of that work, right, is my point. And I know Justin Jefferson is great. I know he's amazing. He's Superman. He's everything, right? But he's not going to be able to take all of that passing production. They spent the Vikings went out this offseason. They spent a 1st-round pick on my favorite wide receiver in this draft class, in Jordan Addison, right? The draft capital is there. When a team drafts a player in the 1st round, they plan to use him from day one unless it is a quarterback, right, at least in some cases. All reports have been saying that all opposing teams and the Vikings camp, they're all super high on Jordan Addison. They're blown away by his talent. I get it. We have to take that with a grain of salt because it is OTAs. But sometimes you have to take risks in fantasy football, and in this case, I'm going to bet on my favorite rookie in the class, in Jordan Addison, a guy who can take that number 2 role and run with it, right, in this Minnesota offense. Plus, at the end of the day, it's a 6th-round pick. It's not a 2nd-round pick, so you can take that risk, and your team can still be in a pretty good spot here after 6 rounds, right, if you do take a chance on it, Jordan Addison. Moving over to the 7th round, you have guys like Cam Akers, Darren Waller, and David Montgomery, are guys that I've highlighted. If Dalvin Cook is out the door, you can add Alexander Mattison to that list as he would be the workhorse there in Minnesota. But I'm going to talk about David Montgomery, a guy who played for my secondary team, the Chicago Bears, for a long time. Love David Montgomery, right? But he signed a 3-year, $18 million deal this offseason with the Detroit Lions. He's going to replace Jamal Williams, who, let's not forget, Jamal Williams had 18 touchdowns on the ground last season. He was a touchdown merchant. But with the Lions drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, it's hard to envision that David Montgomery this season is going to be anything more than a low-end RB2, high-end RB3. But keep in mind that last season, Jamal Williams, inside the 10-yard line, had a league-high 45 carries. And that was obviously en route to a running back 12 finish. So Jamal Williams, as a backup running back in this offense last year, finished as a running back 1 in fantasy football. and not to mention, like I said, he had 18 touchdowns on the ground. Absolutely insane. But David Montgomery, as talented as Jamal Williams is, he is the overall he's a better back, right? That is my point. He is better than Jamal Williams. If the offense remains the same, it's hard to believe, that with Ben Johnson coming back for another year, that the scheme isn't the exact same from last year. Minor changes, right? But David Montgomery should get all of the work plus some of a Jamal Williams. And plus, there's been reports in OTAs that Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back that this team drafted at the number 12 pick, they've been using him at the slot receiver, right? So in the first half of the year when this team is experimenting with Jahmyr Gibbs, Monty should be a reliable start week in and week out. He should be a guy you throw in your flex spot, and you hope that he gets you a touchdown or two, right? And at the end of the day, let's say Jahmyr Gibbs at the second half of the year takes off, right? Or if you can kind of see that trend happening, you can trade the upside of a David Montgomery at the trade deadline in your fantasy leagues and just reap the rewards, right, of a David Montgomery. But moving over here to round number 8, you have guys like Deshaun Watson. As a Browns fan, I wanted to be selfish and talk about him, right? But Brandon Cooks, I could see having an okay year there in Dallas. Quentin Johnson's another rookie you can bet on. Anthony Richardson, he's a very polarizing player this year. I'm starting to believe in him a little bit more, even as a Gators fan. But Evan Ingram, Javonte Williams, and Tua are the three guys that I've highlighted this round. And I know I've already talked about Joe Burrow as a quarterback, but a guy who I think is being disrespected this year. I want to dive deeper into it. Tua Tagovailoa is my 8th round, one of my favorite picks here, at least at this point. And I will say, it's going to take a lot of guts to draft this guy in 2023. But I can promise you, as of June 6th, the draft pick of Tua Tagovailoa in the 8th round of your drafts, it's going to be worth it. Despite having the 2 big head injuries that he had last year that kept him out a lot of the second half of the year, Tua led all quarterbacks in passer rating, yards per attempt, and touchdown percentage of all throws, right? He's in an offense with 2 dynamic playmakers, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. May I remind you, those 2 have touchdown potential on each and every play. He still has the offensive guru of a head coach in Mike McDaniel. He wants to push that Mike McDaniel, if we learned anything last year, he wants to use a lot of motion and he wants to push the ball down the field each and every play. So when you have the dynamic playmakers with the offense backing, or with the coach backing the high-powered offense, it's a risky pick. I get it, right? But Tua's bulked up. He has everything else behind him, though. With the coach, with the offense. It looks like he's back to 100%, if not more. And I believe if he's back to 100%, right, I'm excited to draft this dude. If I miss out on the first round or 2 of quarterbacks, the first tier of 2 of quarterbacks, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, if I have the 4th pick, I would not be ashamed to take Tyreek in the first round, Waddle in the second, and in round 8. Take a guy like Tua in 2023. Very risky, I know, right? But that's just how much I believe in this Miami offense. That's going to do it for today's show. On Friday, though, I want to keep these videos relatively short. Otherwise, I wouldn't went through all 16 rounds today, right? But on Friday, we're going to go through the first 8 rounds yet again, and we're going to go through the players not to draft. So if you're interested in that, or if you enjoyed the video at all, please support us down below. As I mentioned, we're on the road to 300 subs, and we can't get there without you. It's already crazy that we've gotten to this point as a community, and as we're growing, it's astonishing to see, right? SAT word of the day there. But we appreciate any and all support. And just to recap here before we get out of here, we had Stephon Diggs, Saquon Barkley in the second round, Josh Jacobs, and Joe Burrow. George Kittle, Jordan Addison, David Montgomery, and Tua. We did some more extensive look into those guys going into this season. Like I mentioned, Friday, more heat coming. Tuesdays and Thursdays on this channel, we have a sports podcast with my co-host, and we talk about the latest and the greatest sports news. So if you love sports at all, this is the channel for you. I promise you that, right? But without further ado, we'll see you guys tomorrow with another podcast here with my co-host tonight. I'll see you guys then. Stay happy, stay healthy. We're out.